All right, we are recording. Welcome everyone. So glad to have everyone here and welcome back to the Y. How exciting. I got to spend some time at home too for a few months before being able to come back. And if y'all are probably not anywhere as lazy as I am, but I ran out of projects. I was bored and I was so ready to come back and do some good things. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today, just to catch up on some protocols that we have now that we're implementing at the Y. Just know that everything that we go over today is a combination of guidelines from the CDC, the state of Texas, and Metro Health here in San Antonio. It's a little combination of all of them. I always also like to start off by saying things might change in a week. We all know that things changed real quick this week on Wednesday when the county judge required businesses to require everyone coming in to wear face masks. And we're going to go over all of that here shortly. But just know that trust us when we're doing the best we can with the information we have as frequently as it changes and comes at us. So again, thank you for your patience. I appreciate all of you very much. All right, I'm going to let's see, Veronica start us off and just do a quick welcome.
Sure. Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon to everyone. I think we are excited to launch this group. What I would say is backed by popular demand. Definitely one of the number one things in our surveys that members are looking for is their group exercise and our instructors. So familiar faces, those that motivate them and keep them going, is this group here that we're about to onboard. As Scott mentioned, we have taken our time with our reopening plans to really take the safety and prioritize the health and well-being of our staff and our members and the rest of the community. So as we begin to launch group exercise, know that we have taken our time with this group to really be thoughtful about the guidelines that we put in place. And again, they might be the guidelines for this week and that might change the following week. So I hope everyone remains flexible and willing to change. And if anything comes up, definitely communicate what needs to be communicated so that we ensure the safety of everyone. So we're excited to have you guys back, and I'll turn it over back to Scott.
Great, thanks, Veronica. Well, we're going to get started because we do have quite a bit to go over, and also to give you the opportunity to ask questions. Veronica, you probably want me to go over the reopening plan first, right?
Excuse me?
Do you want to go over the blue book first, or do you want to go just straight into the health and safety?
I think I don't know. I think we're okay. The reopening plan, it's just basically the plans that we're kind of in right now. We're in phase 2 of opening up group exercise. So I'm not sure we have to go into detail for that. Let's just go on with the health and safety portion of our
Absolutely.
training.
That'll save us some time for more questions. But also I did send you all the blue book, and it has reopening plan on there. I would suggest that you go in there and just look at the frequently asked questions area. That may answer a lot of questions that you might have. So please be familiar with that. That's what I'm going to ask that you please do, whether it's right after this or before you show up for your first class. Please do that. All right, but first thing we're going to do here is go over our branch facility health and safety. And not going to talk about tables of contents because we're going to go through all of it. The first thing we're going to talk about is employee safety. What's going to happen when you come to work, if you haven't already visited a Y, is that we are going to screen you before you come into our facility. We're going to ask you, and we're going to show you these lists from cough all the way down to fever, if you have any of these symptoms that are new or are worse. A couple of things that I do want to go over with symptom-wise. We all, or if you're like me, you have allergies. You know what that does to you. It can make you cough, it can give you a headache, and it can give you a sore throat. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is it something new that has been just recently hit you, or is something getting worse that you normally don't have? I also want to emphasize, even if you do have bad allergies and it's just a cough, but it is a cough that you cannot contain, then that's something that we need to talk about before you come to work. And I don't know if Veronica wants to go over that because I know that we do have some members sometimes as well, but sometimes it's optics, but if it's a cough that you can't control, then we're going to ask, what do you want to say on that, Veronica, while we're in the symptoms?
Yeah, so we are updating that based on our call yesterday with Metro Health, that upon screening our members and our staff, that if you're having any of these symptoms, I would ask you at this point whether it's seasonal allergies and or other type of symptoms that are causing cough. At this point, we would ask you probably not to teach, as we're asking our members not to come in, just because what that signals out, the member might not understand that it's a seasonal allergy or something else to do with you having a cough or sneezing. So we are asking our members not to come in if any of these symptoms, if they have any of the symptoms. So I would practice the same thing from a staff perspective.
Absolutely. Just wanted to mention that because some things that we talked about yesterday changed a little bit. But probably the biggest thing that we're going to do that you'll notice is we will take your temperature upon coming into the facility. It has to be under 100 degrees. If you test and you're 100 degrees or over, we will give you a little bit of a cooling off period. We also offer this to our members, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And so what does cooling off mean? Well, what happens, we all know it's hot, and especially with the humidity, it's going to cause your body temperature to rise more rapidly. So some of you may, for exercise, walk to the Y. You may run to the Y. You may do something before you come to the Y. So if that is the case, just make sure that you plan ahead. Maybe instead of showing up 15 minutes early, you show up 30 minutes early, just so that your body can be cool. But we're going to give you 15 minutes after the first time you test over 100, at 100 or over, and to cool off. Now, we may ask you to sit in your car to cool off. We're not going to put you in an area where there's a bunch of people, because the new rule here in San Antonio is you either have to be 6 feet apart or you have to wear a mask. Mandatory, no getting around that, whether you're a staff or a member. And we'll go more into that in a minute. But if you do test over 100 degrees again, the second time, we will ask that you leave and not return to the Y for a minimum of 3 days. To come back to the Y, you do have to have a doctor's note saying that you are okay to come back to work. If you do go to the doctor and you test positive for COVID-19, there are a couple of things that need to take place. One is you do need to let your supervisor know, and then you and or your supervisor need to contact Stacy Oxenberg. Stacy is on this call today. She's going to be speaking here shortly, so you'll get to see who she is. But she is our CHRO, which basically means she's in charge of human resources. And the reason we're wanting you to tell us, we normally wouldn't want you to always tell us when you're sick, but in March, the government passed the CARES Act. What the CARES Act provided was for us to be able to pay you while you're out sick for COVID-19. So that's a good thing if perhaps some reason you get COVID-19. That's the reason we need to know. So if you can email Stacy or have your supervisor email Stacy and say, this is so-and-so, they have tested positive, and we are going to pay you for the time that you're out up to 2 weeks, okay? What we're going to pay you is your average hours per week.
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Scott is describing a sick pay that was approved by the federal government to run from April through the end of this year for employers with less than 500 employees. And actually, as of today, we have just passed 500 employees. So when you guys come back to work, even as of today, that benefit no longer exists for us if you haven't been working before this date. So our claim period ended yesterday when we exceeded 500 employees.
Oh.
So if we were to dip back down below 500, which, as we said at the beginning, this is all sort of a big science experiment. So we're being very flexible. If we need to shut down aquatics for some reason, or some other program group that would take us below 500, then we would go back to being eligible for that type of sick pay. But as all of you are onboarding into the Group X health and wellness positions, now that we're over 500, that will no longer apply.
Oh, great. Good to know. Did not know we hit that today. In a way, that's a good thing for us because we're trying to get back to whatever our new normal is going to be. Okay, so having said that, just take out the part of being paid for that. But we will ask that if you do test positive for COVID-19, that you obviously will be asked to leave and not return to work until you have all of your symptoms are gone, and that you have a doctor's note saying that you are well enough from recovering from COVID-19 to come back to work. We don't list that you should be out for those 14 days, but I promise you, you will probably be out 14 plus days if you have COVID-19, and especially if you're at the very beginning of that, of being ill with that. So just keep an open communication with your supervisor, but just remember you need a doctor's note to get back. Once you enter the facility, if you do not have a fever, you must wash or sanitize your hands. You do that by, at the little thermometer station, there will be a hand sanitizer little bottle, so you can sanitize your hands there. If for any reason there is not, because they ran out real quick or something, just go straight to the closest facility where you can wash your hands with soap and water. Soap and water will always trump hand sanitizer, because washing with warm water and soap actually gets rid of more germs and viruses than the sanitizer itself. Once you enter the facility, you have to keep 6 feet separation from other individuals and members. If that distancing is not feasible, then that is why we are having you to wear a mask. So once you enter the facility, you do have to wear a mask. We're going to talk about how the mask works once you get into your class in just a second. But until then, you do have to wear a mask. Just keep in mind your face cover, that you wear your face covering, that you have good hand hygiene. What does good hand hygiene mean? It means washing your hands as frequently as you can or as you think about it. My rule of thumb is like, if you're thinking about, do I need to wash my hands? You probably need to wash your hands. And it doesn't matter if it was 15 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago, it's a good habit to get into. Cough etiquette, you will have a face covering on, but it is also suggested that you put your face in your elbow and just cough in there. That will again reduce the potential for any type of virus escaping. And I think you are all very well and old enough and smart enough to know that there is not going to be anything that's going to be 100% proof. So what we're doing is trying to take every precaution that we can to reduce the spread of COVID-19. I told you earlier that we are getting all of this information that's in these new protocols from the CDC, the state of Texas, and Metro Health here in San Antonio. Now, when you come to work, we will provide you with the following. You must be trained on appropriate cleaning and disinfection and hand hygiene. We talked about hand hygiene, making sure that you're constantly either washing your hands or you're using hand sanitizer. That's after touching things, cleaning things, whatever it is. We will provide appropriate PPE. PPE is your personal protective equipment. That includes a face mask or face covering, gloves, and eye protection. You may not need all of that, but all of that will be provided if it is needed. You all will be provided with a face cloth or a face covering provided from the YMCA. That is a cloth face covering. If you choose to wear a different type of face covering, as long as it fits snug and it covers your nose and your mouth, all of it, then you are able to wear that as well. I personally do not wear the cloth ones. To me, it's a little bit harder to breathe in, so I use the disposable ones. But that's something I buy personally for myself. It is up to you, and I would recommend you, and you probably already know this by now, find a comfortable mask. Because you may not think that that's a big deal, but once you are in that mask for 30 minutes, or if you need to wear it longer, it's going to start really grinding on you. And unfortunately, you've got to keep it on. So if you need to try a couple, that's fine. We don't care what type of mask you wear. I mean, obviously, it can't have any vulgar or anything like that sayings on it. I have to say that because I'm sure somebody would try that. But there are some really cool ones out that I see every day. You're welcome to choose your choosing. Again, as long as it fits snug and covers your nose and mouth. Everybody in here should be trained in first aid and CPR. And the reason I say that is because the way you remove your gloves in first aid is if you are asked to wear gloves because you are cleaning or something, we will ask that you take off those gloves in the same manner. So just act like the gloves are contaminated. Just real quickly, the first glove would be pinched in the palm of the hand and pull it off. And then on the second glove, the 2 fingers stuck underneath the glove and then pull it off over the first one. When you're wearing your masks, it's always best to only wear the mask and only handle the mask actually by the strings, by what goes around your ear or what ties in the back. Try not to touch the front, or the back of the masks. What happens once you really get out in public and around people, that mask is, quote, contaminated. So the less that you touch it, the better, because we all know what happens once we touch our face. We're probably going to touch it again, and we're just trying to keep the virus again from spreading. The big thing that we talked about yesterday when we were on the call with Dr. Wu was if there's a situation where you don't know if it's a mask or a social distancing is always the one that should trump everything. But also know that masks are required. So you should have a double layer, first by wearing your mask and also by being 6 feet apart. I did see that there's some questions going on. Anything that we need to talk about, Veronica or Doug? No? Okay. Each facility that you are working at has a designated person that is in charge of the supplies and the disinfection, and they will pretty much be the lead person to tell you if you forget how to clean something, what to do, where gloves are, goggles. They will be that go-to person. They will have all the cleaning, disinfecting information that you need. So that's kind of mainly what this page goes over. Just be sure that before you use your mask or your glove, wash your hands, then put your gloves and masks on. And then after you take your mask and or gloves off, you always want to wash or sanitize your hands again. The big thing that is really important, and I'll probably go over this more than once and you'll just be like, but just remember, anytime you touch something, that's right after that is probably when, as soon as you can be in a position to wash or sanitize your hands, you will want to do that. Because I promise you, what you touch probably has already been touched by 5, 6, 7, 8 other people before that. Frequently touched surfaces. So think about in the Group X room, what are your frequently touched surfaces? Those are the areas that are definitely going to need to be cleaned and disinfected the most. And we'll talk a little bit, or I'll have Doug talk a little bit more about how we're going to approach the cleaning in those rooms when we get to that area. But it's pretty much the same as everything else. If it's a touchable object or area, we clean it. Basically, I'm not going to go into great detail over hard and soft porous surfaces, but if it's an object and it needs to be cleaned, you need to clean it with a sanitizer. If that sanitizer the sanitizer that we provide has a 10-minute dwell time. And the 10-minute dwell time means it needs to sit for 10 minutes if possible. In those 10 minutes, it's going to be able to kill the most bacteria and viruses in those 10 minutes. Each chemical has, some of them are the same, some of them have different dwell times. Ours is a 10-minute dwell time. Is that possible every single time on every single object and on every single piece of equipment? Probably not. It's just the real world. But we'll talk about whose job it is in a minute, but if you are wiping something down, as long as you wipe it down and if you try to give it that 10-minute dwell time, that's all we can do. If someone behind you, you turn your back, someone grabs a piece of equipment or someone does this or that, we can't help that. So it's all good. The only thing about laundered surfaces is that if you do get any type of contamination on your clothes, we'll give you the opportunity to change clothes or to go home and change clothes. But that's probably not going to happen. The contamination can come from sweat, from saliva, all kinds of stuff like that. That's talking about clothing. We talked about social distancing here. You also notice in your facilities that there are a lot of chairs, especially if they are a bench or anything like that, that accommodates more than one person, that those benches or those places are not available anymore for people to sit on. Anything that will attract more than one person to an area, we've tried to get rid of that. Because again, we're trying to keep people away from others. Even when you're in the office area and you're not on duty teaching a class, but you are in the Y, you still have to wear a mask and you still have to keep 6 foot distance. So if you're making copies or if you're trying to check in your timesheet and so on, just make sure that that is done. Individual seats is probably what you'll see most at the Y, if any. There are probably a few benches that are just permanently in the floor at some of the facilities. Those are still there, but they probably have little X marks on where and where not to sit. We will not have meeting rooms and shared spaces anymore. So I know Group X is probably a close-knit family, and you may sometimes want to chat and be friendly before and after. We're going to ask that you not congregate around in a group for the time being, because again, that puts us and you and others at risk. We talked about frequently touched surfaces. I'm going to try not to go over that again because I know that y'all are all good with that. If you are cleaning something and there is dirt on it or visible debris, you need to clean that debris off of it before you actually sanitize it. If you sanitize something with dirt or something else, fuzz or anything like that on it, the chemicals are not able to work like they should. So keep that in mind. Also for storage, please only bring to the Y from now on what you need to bring. I mean, you don't want to leave anything expensive, obviously, in your car, but only bring in what you need, because that gives you the opportunity of a less chance of something being contaminated that your stuff comes in contact with. If you have an area where you keep your stuff, make sure that your stuff is separate from everyone else, that you're not laying your stuff on top of each other or anything like that. There should be a space already. You may just leave it in the Group X room, which is fine, but just keep that. Just bring as minimum stuff to work as you can and not to pile your stuff on top of others. If you do have disposable gloves and or masks that you're wearing, there should be at each facility a separate waste receptacle for that PPE to go into. I'm not going to go over deliveries because y'all do not talk about, y'all don't really handle deliveries. But just some good tips to remember when you're using a face covering. Wash your hands before and after you're putting on a mask. Make sure that it covers both the mouth and the nose. Again, it should fit snugly and comfortably. It should not hurt for you to wear it. If you're having super indented marks on your face because it's so tight, then we might think about a different mask. Make sure that it is secured either behind your ears with loops or you tie it. Make sure that you allow for good breathing. That doesn't mean that you can make it loose. Just make sure that it's a material that you're comfortable breathing with. Try not to touch your eyes, nose, and mouth while wearing your mask. And when removing it, always put on, like I said earlier, put on and take off your mask by the ear loops or the ties. Don't pull it off the front or anything like that, because then you could be touching a contaminated surface. After you take it off, wash your hands. Also, if you have a cloth face covering, that needs to be washed at the end of every day. If you don't, I'm sure after about 3 or 4 days, it's going to be kind of stinky anyway, because you're breathing heavily on it and it's not the fun. If you do have a disposable mask, they're disposable. They're called disposable for a reason. So those should not be worn for a week or 3 weeks at a time. I mean, I'll be honest, I've worn mine 2 or 3 days, but I also sanitize mine at the end of each day with a UV light that I have. It's for my phone, but I just put my through it. So that's the way you can do that, so that you can make your disposable ones last a little bit longer. But I still would not use a disposable one more than 3 days. Now we're going to start going into some group exercise activity, or what we're looking from you all. And we're going to start that with Doug.
Okay, I'm going to just kind of go through the checklist for you guys when you come in to start teaching your classes. And part of this discussion is going to talk about reservations, which we're going to discuss here in a few minutes on the call. We will be taking reservations for the classes, as there will be a limited number of spots for each class to help accommodate for the appropriate spacing. So just kind of a checklist. What's going to happen prior to your class? For right now, you'll stop by the front desk because, again, there will be a reservation system where they can give you a printout of who has registered for your class. Members have 24 hours in advance. We are marking off the group exercise studios based on appropriate spacing. There will be a marker in each spot, and that's where you'll ask the members to stand to help them keep the appropriate spacing. So you'll get that printout, and when you go back to your studio, you can use that time to validate who has reserved their spot. If there's anyone there who's not sure about that, or they haven't reserved a spot, you can direct them back to the front desk. If there's still a spot available, they can reserve that from the app directly, or they can stop by the front desk and our staff member can reserve their spot for them. They can reserve a spot up until the time the class starts. After a class starts, reservations are no longer open, as well as we do not want our members entering the classroom or the studio after classes began, just to help accommodate for the appropriate spacing and announcements and the disruption that would cause to your class. If you did your printout maybe 10 minutes before class starts, there's obviously still some time for them to reserve. So between the time you get your roster and they show up, you can just ask them to validate it. They should have it right there on their phone, or they could just let you know, hey, I just stopped by and there was one more spot. They can let you know that verbally. We'll try to the best of our ability, have a staff there, if possible, either a wellness coach or a director, to kind of help for the first week or two to help you regulate that as our members are learning this new way of joining your class. So after you stop by, get your roster, validate those who should be in your class. As you enter your room, as I mentioned, there will be a little marker on the floor. You'll ask the members to pick a spot. If it is body pump where they do need equipment, they can start getting their equipment out, setting it up. And then once you get everyone in the room, that's when you could talk about the correct etiquette. They will be asked to clean the equipment before and after. It should be cleaned by the time they get there, but we will have the necessary supplies, gym wipes or disinfectant spray and paper towels that they can wipe down the equipment that they would need for that class. You can explain to them the space and the design of the studio. We're trying to be very conservative at the start to allow for the appropriate spacing. Being the highest risk of exposure is being, as Scott mentioned, within 6 feet of another person, especially within 15 minutes or longer. So we feel like we've laid out your studios well enough to account for that and accommodate for that. But please communicate back to your director if it feels like, even with those numbers, it feels too crowded, because we can always adjust. The reason that we're able to start group exercise is because we're going to be doing this in a safe manner that we feel that would put our members at the least risk. So we will ask them to help follow our guidelines so that we can continue to offer group exercise classes. Some of the formats we understand involve a lot of movement where people might be intruding in other people's space. Just be prepared for those modifications or instruction during the class to help them keep in mind to stay within their own social space and try not to impede and interfere with someone else's 6 foot area. For right now, we're not going to be providing microphones. We do know that can be a challenge for a class, but we just feel it's the safest thing at this point to not have the microphone. Even if you change the sponge out, it's just that face contact with the microphone. We do understand some of you may have your own. If you want to bring your own, that's fine, but we will not be sharing mics at this point. In terms of wearing the mask, you do not need to wear the mask while instructing. Again, that is while you're coming into our facility, or if you're in situations where you are within 6 feet of other staff or members, you would need to wear the mask. But while you're instructing, you could take your mask off. Just ensure that there's not a member right in front of you. You know, make sure the appropriate spacing, and then it would be okay to take off your mask while instructing. There will be a flyer posted outside of the studio door, and the directors of your facility. Yeah, Scott's gonna, this will be one thing to help you guys out. We know what happens. Members try to sneak in at the last minute or after class has started, so we'll try to help communicate to them that class is in progress. Please stop and visit the app to reserve your spot. If you'll go back, Scott, thank you. Go back to the other slide, Scott, with the distancing. This is an example of how we have tried to mark out your studio spaces with a 10-foot across in front of the member, 4 feet on each side. So again, in preparedness for your class, there should be markings already on your group exercise floor, or if it is a spin class, the appropriate amount of bikes already spaced out on your behalf. So you guys will not have to worry about trying to space the equipment or the members out. That should be marked for them with the appropriate cleaning equipment. I will also add, this sign will be posted outside of your studio as well. And there's going to be a number in there. In this particular example, it says 25. That's to show our members that this particular studio's capacity is 25 participants. Also at this time, we will not be providing mats for use. So there's just too much opportunity for people sharing mats. They're not that sanitary, and a lot of them have that porous, like a yoga mat material. We will ask members if they need a mat to bring their own mat for yoga class as an example, or if there's another format that requires a mat. We just will not be providing mats at this point. We've talked about at some point in the future, maybe having those available at the front desk, maybe yoga mat for sale. We don't have that yet, but maybe something we can implement in the near future. Scott, if you'll go back up a little bit, I want to see if I missed something on the class announcements. Yeah, just a couple things. As mentioned, that they must reserve their spot prior to entering the class. You know, we really want to work with our members and not make it so restrictive. So we will have that front desk assisting in that reservation system for our members. If you guys can make sure to get into the NetPulse app and just familiarize yourself with that. I think Susie's going to review some of that here in a minute. Encourage your members to arrive on time, that we will not be taking late arrivals. And the other thing, if you could really ask them, if they have a reservation as one of your announcements, to remind them to go into the app and cancel their class if they cannot attend, because once they cancel, it'll open up a new spot. We don't want people reserving and taking a spot from another member. So that's going to probably need to be a frequent reminder for a while, and really ask your members to cancel their class if they're not able to attend. And then we will be asking them to assist in the cleaning of the equipment. All of our facilities right now are closed between 1 and 3 o'clock. And we're using that time kind of as a midday disinfecting and cleaning. So in addition to your assistance, we will have staff to kind of go in between those closing times to help hit those high touched areas, whether it's a light switch or those other frequently touched that maybe not equipment. Was there another slide on there, Scott?
Just on reservations.
Okay, reservations. And then Susie, is this the point that you were going to review the reservation system for us?
Yes, I sure can. So, hello everybody. So the reservation system obviously is going to be a really new thing for our members, and I think it's new for them with their experience with the Y, but not probably new in terms of how we all function now. And so the easiest way for me to walk you through this is if you all have your phone with you, and I would bet 98% of us do. So if you could open up the YMCA app on your phone. If you don't have it, make sure that you get our new app. But for those of you who can do that, if you open the app and you click on the schedules tile in the middle of your phone, your first page that comes up is kind of an option to see your classes. So what I would like for you guys to do for today's purpose, so that you can kind of make a reservation yourself in live, is at the bottom of that screen, you'll see home, locations, and favorites. And if you would please click on locations, and then from that menu, select Mays YMCA at Petrenko, because I have some test spots set up for you. And then if you're generally there, if I can get a yay or an A or I'm there, yes, we're good, and any kind of signal.
Got it.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so at the top, our members can sort by the date, by instructor, or by activity. For our purposes, what I'm going to ask you to do is the very top one that should be displayed. It says Team YMCA Test, and it'll say like a 9 o'clock class. If you will click on that, and you'll see this is exactly what it looks like when our members will go in to make a reservation. So you'll see at the top, there are 29 spots. There were more, so some spaces have already been booked for this. There's a blue box at the bottom that asks you if you want to book now, and you're going to click just book now. And then what will happen from here is the member is going to get an email that says, hey, you've just booked Team YMCA Test class. Enjoy your workout. And they get a little message on your phone. You get an email that will remind you, remind the our member. The other thing that does happen is if, say, they made the reservation today for a class tomorrow, they'll get a notification in the app also that says, hey, don't forget you have a class today. And that's as difficult as it is to book a reservation in a class. Now, assuming that one of our members decides, oh man, I can't show up and it's 45 minutes before the class, if you hit cancel now and say, yes, you want to cancel this class, it will tell you have successfully canceled. And now you'll be able to see in live how quickly 2 spots and more as you do this open back up. So it gives new people the opportunity to quickly jump in. The other thing that I would share with you about this is that it's really important for anyone who may be standing outside your classroom saying, gosh, I really wish I could take this class. And if you are looking at your app and it shows, gosh, we have 2 spots left, help them get in, because the membership desk will also be helping to fill this, especially those last minute people who come in. So that is as complicated as it gets. When you guys arrive and you go to the front desk and they print your class roster for you, that's the current easiest way to identify who's in your class. There is some things in development for those of you who have the GroupX Pro app on your phone, kind of the instructor side. Eventually you'll be able to see a roster for a class that you're teaching on your phone, and that's kind of in development. But for the short term, if you just make sure you stop by, grab your roster, and then direct people to the front desk if they're having trouble, or to the app to get into your class if there's space. And that's as tough as it gets. Questions? Sounds like not. It's really simple. Awesome.
Great, thanks, Susie. Doug, you have anything else specific to?
No, just kind of looking here. I think someone is asking if they can sign up someone else on their behalf in the app. No, I don't believe that's the case, right, Susie? When you sign up, that sign up is attached to your phone. So no, we would only want that person signing up for their own spot.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah. So if, let's say you're coming to a class with your spouse, and if your spouse doesn't have the Y app on their phone, one, encourage them to do so. And two, they would need to stop by the front desk, and someone at the front desk can then get them in the class for you.
And the classes are being set up, if not already in now, but in terms of live, once our staff have entered it, it's live. So if you see a class in there, that's a live class. They just will not be able to reserve their spot until 24 hours in advance of that class.
had a
We have
question.
a few. Go right ahead.
I guess no guest passes either, right? I mean, we don't even, I'm not even sure if we even give guest passes or if I'm confusing gyms. But only Y members, no guests.
Yeah, correct.
At this time, we're not taking guest passes just because we're still at 50% occupancy. We have limited class sizes, so we want to make sure to reserve all opportunities for our members at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have Angela asking the Pulse app that was mentioned before. Does that interfere with the Y app?
It's the same app. NetPulse is the YMCA app. It's one and the same. So the schedules are on the YMCA app.
Sarah Kingsley, when does this go live? All the classes are live and are able. You're able to look at the classes right now on the NetPulse app. However, 24 hours in advance booking would start on Sunday. So Sunday members can start booking for Monday. Alicia, I believe the gym DR opens at 6 a.m. and my class starts at 6 a.m. I believe that our staff arrived probably at the front desk 15 minutes prior. So I'm going to ask our leadership team there to make sure we touch base with our openers as they arrive a few minutes early to open the building, that they that this is part of their opening procedures for a 6 a.m. class. So you should try to have that list ready for you. Class, go.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question as far as the CPR protocol. If somebody goes down, or is it supposed to be the same protocol as far as with the COVID-19?
Yeah, did y'all like for me to speak on that? Okay.
Go for it, Scott.
What we've done is we have researched that, and thank you for asking that question. It all stays the same. If you feel uncomfortable with giving anyone mouth to mouth, there are a couple of different changes that do need to take place. One is, if you do feel uncomfortable, you do not have to give mouth to mouth, but you have to give chest compressions. You must do chest compressions until someone takes over or EMS gets there. You know, we can use the valves or the face mask for the mouthpieces that I'm talking about for CPR are one-way valves, but I do understand that you're still extremely close and very close in proximity to someone. I have been talking with Crystal on this, and we are thinking that we may bring in the push, I cannot remember what they're called at the moment, but you know, that gives the air automatically themselves. We do not have those at every facility. But again, these are things that are ongoing, but for the time being, you can do CPR as normal. If you do not feel comfortable, then you will put a mask on the person and then do just chest compressions. Does that answer the question for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Great question. I appreciate you doing that. I forgot to go over that.
I think there was a question about fans, and I think the overhead fans are okay. The fans that are more concerning is if there's a fan behind someone that would be blowing from them into the next person. So we just don't want fans that would cause someone's airspace to blow into someone else's. So they would need to be pointed in a different direction, like up or on, just for airflow purposes, but not wanting directional fans that would blow, you know, someone's germs into someone else. I think the door situation, if it needs to be open, if that's the case, we'll just need to find an alternate way to have that sign that says class. Typically, you'd close the door with the sign on it that says class is closed at this point, or class in session. So you might touch base with your supervisor or the person of that branch if we need to come up with a different solution to keep the door open but still signal not to enter the space. And no, members do not need to wear masks during the class. Again, they're only required to wear a mask if they are getting within 6 feet of another person. So no, not required to wear a class during a mask, or whether working out or doing cardio or things like that.
Glenn, you do have access, Glenn, to your Group X Pro, but the NetPulse app is found on the App Store under YMCA SATX, and you set up your own login information to use that app. So as instructors, you should have access to your Group X Pro as an instructor, but for the NetPulse, where members use it for reservation purposes, that's an app that you go onto your app store. It's YMCA SATX. Carlos, for branches that offered fitness in the park, are they permitted? Right now, I think we'll need to review that since they are not members, and see what the flow of classes are and the demand of the class at first. Oh, sorry, Doug, you did answer that. I'm sorry.
Did we talk about the CPR expired one? I'm sorry,
No, we haven't addressed that yet.
So are we hosting CPR classes? I think we
don't have anything set up right now for CPR classes. That will be something we will still be working on. We might connect with you individually if that's your case. That's my understanding. There might be an extension on that right now with Y the USA to extend that CPR certification. So if your CPR has expired, please reach out to your supervisor, and we can see what the option is right now.
Yeah, I was reading up on that this week because it is a little confusing what they're putting out from YUSA. But if you started working like a month or so ago, it's extended 2 months. But now if you're working now, it's about a month. They are extending it, but it just depends on, I think, when your start date was. So yes, please get with your supervisor and then have them get with either me or Doug or Veronica, and we can find that out. I'll work on that still next week, find out what that difference is. But for the time being, you're good now. So
Glenn, we'll research that for you on the microphone situation. He was asking if there's a way that instructors could purchase their own, if we could get a deal on those. I don't think they're typically compatible. I think they're usually brand specific. Susie's on the call. She may know more than I do on that. And then Alicia, I think please get with Javier, the branch director on the emergency exit at DR Sims. He'd be more familiar with that situation at that facility. So please connect with him on that emergency door question.
I think there was some other questions on virtual classes. Yes, we are going to continue virtual classes, a lot of them dedicated to our senior population right now. Les Mills on demand, or Les Mills classes that have been accessible to our members, I believe that will be ending in June. So our own virtual classes from a Y perspective will be dedicated more to our active older adults.
Susie, do you have any insight on the microphone situation?
Each branch probably has a different brand that they're using, and they're generally not interchangeable. In terms of like a better deal, I know some of them can be a little pricey, so we can certainly see if there's any kind of deal for instructors just to get the headset portion of it, the receiver piece. So I can look into that for sure.
Thank you, Susie. Yes, if we do, Martha, have a majority of our members coming in, if they are seniors and they do want to take part in your class, perhaps we will have a link on our website, but as well as signing up at our front desk.
If you want to continue to, Scott, if as they keep putting questions in, we can try to keep typing responses. If
Sure.
you want to, feel free to ask
Yeah.
more questions, guys, and we'll type in responses so we can keep moving forward.
Yeah, definitely keep asking the questions because I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. Now we're going to go to member safety. We talked about what we're doing to keep you all safe and some of our protocols for you all and how Group X works. Now we're going to move into what are we doing with our members. So the members will go through the same process that you all do when you walk into the facility. We're going to ask them if they have any of these new or worsening symptoms. And then we are going to take their temperature. Again, if they're over the 100, we'll let them chill out for 15 minutes. But if not, they can come on in. Now with members, it's a little bit different. If they do have a temperature of 100 or over and twice in a row, then we will ask them to leave and they cannot come back to the Y for 72 hours, which is 3 days. We are not going to write down their name. We're not going to write down what their temperature was. None of that will be taken. That is all covered and that is private information. So we will not collect it. We will have to just do the honor system on them not coming back for 3 days. Could they go to another branch? Absolutely. That's just one of those things that is what it is, where you're not allowed to do certain things, and this is one of them. Where this is it's too hard to keep track of, and again, we can't keep their private information. So just tell them if they are over 100 twice in a row, within those 15 minutes, then they can't come back for 3 days. Once they do come into the facility, we will ask them, just like we asked you all, to sanitize their hands or wash their hands. We're going to remind them to keep 6 feet separation from each person. And if that 6 feet is not doable, then we're going to ask them to wear a mask until then. We're going to also tell them, make sure that they wash their hands or sanitize their hands frequently. They have good cough etiquette, and that they clean the equipment and so on. The cleaning of the equipment, all of that material and all of the chemicals and towels and stuff are provided all around the fitness area. You will notice once you get to your facility, and every facility is different, so I'm going to depend on you all to get with your supervisor to show you how it works. But there's only one entrance and one exit now. So there's one door for that. So if there are 2 doors, sometimes I know people go in both of them or go out of both of them. That's not going to happen anymore. We're required to have one for entry and one for exit. If you have automatic doors, that's just a different story, because there's just one door. So, but the front desk, this is not really applicable to you, but they're going to be doing stuff to keep things clean in the front desk area and entryway. There will be signage that is provided for our members throughout the facility. So as soon as you walk in the facility, you're going to see things on the walls. You're going to see little things on the floor. You'll see it all around, reminding members to keep 6 feet, wash your hands, all of that stuff. Already talked about the PPE and cleaning. We kind of talked about lobby areas. You're not going to have to worry about that necessarily. I will say, if you're bringing in food and drink, whatever you bring in can only be for you. There's no more at this time bringing in cupcakes for everyone. Although if you want to bring those to my office, those are allowed. But just no bringing a bunch of food for everybody, okay? We just can't share food at this time. If you are in a break room or any other type of room, like we told earlier, we're not going to let a bunch of people in there. So there may only be 1 or 2 people per break room area, depending on your facility. It's just unfortunately not the time to gather and have fun talk. Just a couple of messaging things that is provided for you. I think this will hopefully come in handy for you all. And that is, when you see your members, they are going to be so excited to be back. They're probably going to be more excited about it than you are. So what can you say to them? What should you say to them? Well, we've given a bunch of talking points. I'm not going to read through all of these because there is a lot. But, you know, welcome them back. Say, hey, we've missed you. You know, it's been hard to be away, you know. Empathize with them. We've all been through the same thing. So have that that true conversation with them. Let them know that they were missed and that you're excited to have them back. They may have questions about how safe we are and how sanitary and what are our cleaning protocols. So, you know, just by reading through this booklet, you can see what most of our protocols are on cleaning and sanitation. You're free to tell them how often we clean and that all of this, we're doing it all to protect not only them, but our staff and our community. So all of this stuff in here, please read through. It will help you answer some questions that you get. I'm going to read through that. Here's some more just key messages that you can read through. If you have staff or if you oversee staff, it just talks about how you can welcome back some of your staff as well. And I know a lot of you all probably haven't been through many, if any, of my trainings, but one of my trainings, we talk about engagement, and something that's real important is how we show up to work and how we engage with people. And on the left-hand side is how the YMCA asks you to show up to work. We ask you to show up to work that you're welcoming, genuine, hopeful, nurturing, and determined. And then when we engage with people, we want to make sure that we welcome them, that we connect to them, support them, and invite them. And I put this up here just to kind of remind you, you know, we're still doing the same stuff that we did, and that's providing a wonderful service to our community and the people in it. And make sure that we're showing up correctly and that we're there to welcome them. And so this is a perfect time to look through some of these attributes to see if you want to use these as you welcome people back to the Y. And lastly here, we're going to talk about, there is an addendum to the Code of Conduct for members. I'm not going to read through this whole thing either, but it just says the same thing that we've kind of been going over. It says, hey, we're following CDC and state guidelines. We're going to ask that you let us take your temperature before you enter the facility. Make sure that you keep a safe distance of 6 feet from others. You wash your hands and so on. You know, remind them that they need to bring their own towels, their own water bottles, all of that. And that kind of brings me up, it reminds me of the water fountain. Water fountains are open, but only to refill the water bottle. There's no drinking out of the water fountain. And there are signs that say that, but just remind them of that. But they do need to bring their own water bottles and sweat towels. And remind them, if you don't feel good, and I'm going to remind you too, if you do not feel good, please stay home. This is not the time to be the hero and say, I'm going to push through this because I did last time and I can do it again. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, the symptoms are so varied and they're so confusing with other different like colds and sore throats and all that, that we honestly don't know what we have until we get tested. So it only takes one person down to take out an entire department, to take out an entire senior team, to take out an entire branch. So please, for others, for yourself and our community, if you do not feel well, please do not come to work. I do like here at the end, make sure that they know that failure to comply is not an option. We are enforcing these strictly, especially the 6-foot rule, because if everyone is sick, then we can't work. And if we can't work, we can't serve our community. So we want to make sure that you stay well, our members stay well, and that the community stays well. So we will be enforcing these throughout all of our facilities. So I'm going to open that up for any questions real quick. All right. Stacy had to jump off, so I do apologize, but she was just going to do a welcome back and just talk about a couple of things and benefits. You did get the update now that unfortunately you don't get paid for if you have the COVID-19 because we're starting today, we are over the 500 mark. Doug, Veronica, do you all have any other things that you'd like to talk about?
There was a few other questions we could get to that haven't been answered yet.
Sure.
Someone asked about the wellness coach, the role of the wellness coach. And right now our wellness coaches are primarily, they're just in the facility, those that have been activated to just walk the facility and assist members. We're not doing FitPath appointments yet at this point. So their role is simply to kind of help clean equipment and be there to assist members. And that's kind of their role at this point in time. That will change in the future as we're able to start doing more. Yes,
Scott, are you able to send this presentation out?
Yes.
it's in the invite that, right, Scott? This whole presentation's in the invite that they got?
All of the material that's written this video will be put into the video training library to be accessed. Is that what you're talking about, to send out the video or to send out the documentation?
Yeah, I think someone was wanting probably just all of this material that we're reviewing today. Cheryl was asking.
Cheryl, can you please email me at Scott, SCOTTB, at ymcasatx.org. If you have not, any of you have not gotten your this material, please email me and I will be happy to shoot that to you today or as I get your email.
Veronica, the question about how the communication, all the different communication formats to the members.
I answered that. Email, communication, social media posts, website.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you'll be able to clock in still at the computer or if you're able to clock in through your phone and you have the app. Scott, maybe you can help with Elizabeth's question on the, I know you've been working a lot with the unemployment benefits, unless we need to direct her.
Yeah.
Stacy.
Elizabeth, yeah, can you shoot me an email as well? And then I will get with you, or I'll get someone in my department that specializes in that more, because I'm not 100% familiar, but we will get your answers questioned. And that is Scott, SCOTTB as in boy, at ymcasatx.org.
And our HR team will be sending you an email about your reemployment. It's not going to be in the form of an offer letter. It's going to be a communication about you coming back on board. So someone from the HR team is going to be emailing everyone who is being reinstated. So that communication will still be coming out to you. But you should have been, obviously, if you're on this call, I'm sure someone reached out about getting on the call and that you have a class starting next week or in the near future. So that means that has been approved, but you will get an official notice through an email.